Shalom. First and foremost, I'd like to give all praise and glory and honor to Yahweh Bashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Wakakadash, and the Heavenly Father, true name is Yahweh, and his unbegotten Son, Bahashem, in the name of Hamashiach, Yahweh Shai. Those are the true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, of the Lashon Kodash, the Holy Tongue. And I said, Barakatham, said the elders and apostles, Wa'aki and Ma'akwa, and I say Shalom. And this is a prophecy update as of February the 3rd, 2026, on this Tuesday night. And this is a news article from RT.com as of February 3rd, 2026, from World News on RT.com. It reads, U.S. threatens Iraq over who controls the country. Hey, what's that? They call their names after their own places. They oppress men's on houses on heritage. And that's Esau, Edom. That's the characteristics of the Edomites, Unrighteous creeds, like it says in Isaiah 10 and verse 1. It says, the White House threatens Iraq over who controls the country. It really supposed to be the people that live in the country that's supposed to control the country. Not modern day Babylon the Great, because that's the characteristics, because Esau runs modern day Babylon the Great, rules over modern day Babylon the Great. Because Esau, that's his characteristics. That's his history, that's his background. Trying to tell what other countries to do, what should they control, what should they do, what should they do as a country, tell what other countries to do. And that's the spirit of modern day Babylon the Great. And Esau, Edom, got that characteristics, because the history proves that, history in ancient times proves that in all way to now. And can see oppressing men's or houses on heritage, and that's Esau, Edom. The White House has reportedly single cuts Iraq's oil export revenues if former Prime Minister Nouri al-Khalili returns to power. The U.S. has warned of Iraq of a possible economic recuperation if the former Prime Minister Ali Maliki returns to power. Bloomberg reported on Tuesday, citing sources. Last month, Iraq's Shia bloc in the preliminary nominated a 75-year-old Ali Maliki, whom Washington viewed as too close to Iran for a third term, likely securing his term once a new president is elected. Al-Maliki served two consecutive terms as a prime minister from 2006 to 2014, the first leader to do so since the 2003 U.S.-led invasions, and previously held our cabinet posts. The White House has stepped up pressure on Baghdad in recent days. People familiar with the matter told the outlet. That's crazy. This has nothing to do with them. Leave these people in their own country alone. Let them deal with their own elections. Meddling in other people's businesses. Hey, that's Esau for you. It says, just like he doing that over there in Iran, same thing. Hey, just like he did that over there in Venezuela. Just like he about to potentially do that over there in Cuba. Just like he about to potentially do that in Colombia. Even though they met each other at the White House, I believe, the president of Colombia and the president of the United States. It says that Maliki return could prompt a financial measures, including limits on oil exports revenues. The leverage dates back to the aftermath of the catastrophic U.S. invasion of Iraq, which placed Iraqi's oil procedures under U.S. oversight. Over 90% of the country's budget exports are deposited in an account of the Federal Reserve Banks of New York in the name of Iraq's fine. NANS ministries managed by the central banks, funding salaries, pensions, and government spendings. The U.S. President Donald Trump has warned that Washington would no longer help Iraq if Maliki returns to office, which they don't need their help any other way. pursuing, because I'm best believe they got some allies for sure. I best believe Iraq they got some allies. Why you think Iran, pro-Iranian groups, China, Russia, Iran, and other countries that support them. So they really don't need the United States. So they would love for them to leave anyway, right along with their military troops. It says so they can leave them alone and their resources and their oil and their new leaders that's supposed to be in power. So this really is their business. So the United States has nothing to do with that meddling in other countries' affairs and trying to snatch their resources. It says insane policies and ideologies. Iran has reportedly urged its Iraqi political allies to resist U.S. pressure. Yeah, to resist U.S. pressure. The Ali Maliki has denounced what he called Washington's blatant interference and insisting that the choice of prime ministers is a sovereign matter. It says under Iraq's power shared system, the premiership is reserved for a Shia politician, while the presidency of the parliamentary speakers goes to Kurd and the Shini, respectively. The politician spent 25 years in exile and returned after the U.S. toppled Saddam Hussein, the Sunni-led government. He participated in a U.S.-backed debackfication, if I pronounce the right program, which critics say that through escalation, violence, and Sunni radicalization. The U.S. invasion and its aftermath caused widespread violence and disruption across Iraq, with the multiple surveys suggesting hundreds of thousands deaths and long-term social and economic consequences. It's the book of Luke. It's the book of Luke 21, verse 25. It says, there shall be signs in the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and upon the earth disgressive nations will perplexity wage war. Right, so we see the disgressive nations will perplexity wage war. Nation against nation, kingdom against kingdom, political wars, geopolitical wars, economical wars, trade wars. And that's what we're seeing. Oil sanctions, oil war, trade wars, tariff wars, nuclear wars. And that's what we're seeing increasingly building up on a day-to-day basis. And this is what Yahushua spoke about that was going to occur in these other times. And there shall be signs in the sun, and the moon, and the stars, and upon the earth transgressive nations will perplexity rich one. Right at midnight, 12 o'clock to 85 seconds, close to midnight, that doomsday midnight clock. We seeing the blood moon. That's about in the month of March, the blood moons. We've been seeing the chariot sightings, this Atlas situation that we've seen from last year and all the way to now. So these signs of the sun and the moon and stars that we're seeing increasingly throughout the whole planet Earth that Yahushua spoke about, he's showing us as well too. And upon the earth, disgressive nations, right? So we see an uprising, uptick of disgressive nations with perplexity, rich one. And this is the book of Matthew, chapter 24. This is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, right? So that's what we're hearing in our world today, wars and rumors of wars. It says, be ye not troubled, for all these things must first come to pass, but it is not yet, right? So it's going to come to pass, but not going to end just yet. Matthew 24 and verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom. Right? So you're going to see nation against nation and kingdom against kingdom increasingly. And there shall be famines and pestilence. Right? We're seeing famines are increasing, pestilence are increasing, earthquakes in diverse places are increasing as well too. And this is Matthew 24. Matthew 12 and verse 25. It says, and Yahushua knew their thoughts, and he said unto them, every kingdom divided against itself is brought to desolation, or in every city or house divided against itself shall not stand. Right? So we're going to see every kingdom, every nation in house divided against itself is going to be brought to desolation. We see the signs of that. Thus saith Hamashiach Yahushua. And this is the book of Second Ezra. It's the book of Second Edges, chapter 9, verse 3. It says, therefore, when there should be seen, therefore, there should be seen earthquakes upwards, people will write some more increasing earthquakes and upwards, people will. It's the book of Second Ezra, chapter 15, verse 15. For the sword and destruction draweth nigh, and one people should stand up and fight against another with swords and hands, right? We see the seditions among the nations. And we see beginning signs of it. It's going to come to full effect right along with that great insurrection uprising. Verse 16, for there should be sedition among men, if any one another, they should not regard their kings or their princes, in the course of action and power, right? That's what we see. As it says again, the U.S. threatening Iraq over who runs the country. Right, and threatens to use oil sanctions and block that oil as well too. Just like they trying to do that over there in Cuba, over there in Colombia, just like they did that in Venezuela. So, hey, Esau, he do unrighteous creeds, and just like he trying to do that over there in Iran as well too. It says NATO nations to deploy troops in Ukraine after a peace deal. Russia has maintained that. It says Russia maintains that deployment of the Western military country is a deal breaker in the ongoing peace negotiations. NATO will deploy troops in Ukraine once the conflict with Russia ends. The U.S. Military bloc chief Mark has said Moscow has maintained that the deployment of Western troops will only escalate the conflicts and could lead. And that's, I believe, what was that, a couple of weeks ago? You had one of the, I think the ministry woman, I forgot her name. She was mentioned that despite the fact they might push forth a ceasefire, and if the deal goes through, but they deploying troops over there, that's only going to cause a conflict and more confrontation between the European Union and NATO versus Belarus and Russia as well too. Could lead to a direct confrontation between Russia and NATO. However, Kharkiv European backers have continuously lobbied to send soldiers as a form of security guarantees for Ukraine. Some European allies has announced that they will deploy troops to Ukraine after a deal is reached. The NATO Secretary General said in a speech in a Ukraine preliminary on Tuesday, troops on the ground, jets in the air, and ships on the Black Sea. The United States will be the backstop. In the meantime, the U.S.-led military bloc is assisting equipment and training Ukrainian armed forces and sending billions of dollars worth of critical U.S. military hardware to Ukraine, T said. Russia has long warned that it will treat any NATO soldiers sent to Ukraine as a legitimate target for strikes. The deployment of Western military units, facilities, and warehouses and other infrastructures in Ukraine is unacceptable to us. It will be considered a foreign intervention that poses a direct threat to Russia, which Russia spoke about that a couple of years back, and they mentioned that once again. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told journalists on Monday, Moscow has a long seen in a conflict as NATO proxy wars and against Russia carried out using Western material and Ukrainian manpower. It says Ukraine's ambition to join the U.S.-led military bloc, as well as NATO's expansion towards Russia's borders, are some of the fundamental causes of the current conflicts, according to Moscow. It says one of Russia's key pieces demands that Kyiv embraces neutrality. It gives up NATO membership ambition and a goal that Moscow says is ready to continue pursuing military in the event of Ukraine refuses to compromise. Because I believe like certain areas that Zelensky is not going to compromise to, there's certain areas that he want to continue to have as part of Ukraine. And then Russia, they want to still continue other parts of what they control as well too. So we're going to see how this plays out. Because even though they're pushing more and more towards this peace deal of a ceasefire, to end the conflict between both sides. But as this news article says, that NATO troops to deploy troops in Ukraine after a peace deal, because Russia warned that if NATO troops be deployed over in Russia to protect for security reasons, Russia still look at that as you know, continue to push forth the war, rather than trying to end it, but they push forth more. As we've been seeing, recently, tensions been heating right back up between the European Union and NATO versus Belarus and Russia. And once again, this is the book of Matthew, chapter 24, and verse 7. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. As we've been seeing, the on and off, back and forth tensions rising between Russia and Ukraine and the European Union and NATO versus Russia and Belarus as well too. Verse 6, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, right? So we hear wars and rumors of wars. See that you be not trouble for all these things must first come to pass, but it's not yet. And this is a news article from RT.com as of February 3rd, 2026, on this Tuesday night. And as we've been seeing, tensions been heating up from late December and all the way into now for the past month and a half or so, almost close to 2 months now. As we've been seeing, protests have been taking place, and you've been having Trump been sending threats to Iran if they don't stop the protesters and they stop the underlying protesters over there. He might send some reinforcements and send nuclear warnings towards Iran. As we've been seeing tensions of that. We've been seeing the tensions rising up once again between the Israel Defense Force versus Iran and the United States armies versus Iran as well too. So I just want to add a side note to that. And it says U.S. Shot down Iranian drones, brutal reports, and a UAV aggressively approached the aircraft carrier at Abraham Lincoln's in the Arabian Sea, the U.S. military has claimed. It says U.S. military has shot down an Iranian drone on Tuesday as it aggressively approached the aircraft carrier USS Abraham Lincoln in the Arabian Sea. Reuters has reported citing that the officials in the Iranian Shahed 139 drone was flying towards the carrier. It was unclear and intended. Reuters wrote, citing that the U.S. military. The report incident comes after U.S. Armada, led by the Abraham Lincoln, positioning itself in the region, and their diplomatic efforts to arrange nuclear talks between Iran and the United States are underway. The F-35C fighter jet from Abraham Lincoln shot down an Iranian drone in self-defense and to protect the aircraft carrier and personnel on board. The spokesperson at the U.S. Military Central Command, Navy Captain Tim Hawkson, told reporters no Americans were harmed in the incident. He added, oil futures rose up more than 1% per barrel after the news, according to the Exodus reported. The negotiations between the United States and Iran teams were planned for this Friday, but Tehran has demanded changes to the venue and format. The Iranians wants to limit the talks to nuclear issues and not discuss things like missiles and proxy groups. They are prioritized for the other countries in the region, he claimed. The Karatat newspaper Al Jazeera reported earlier this week that intervention by Moscow and Ankara has diminished the likelihood that the U.S. attack on Iran made discussions possible. Russia has repeatedly said that it believes the Iranian nuclear issue should be resolved through political and diplomatic means. Despite his threats of new military action, Trump told reporters on Sunday that he hopes we make a deal with Iran. Iran withdraw from the 2015 nuclear accord known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of the Action in 2018. It reimposed sanctions, prompting Tehran to gradually scale back compliance and enrichment of the 60% purity. Matthews 24 and verse 6, and ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars, right? The ongoing back and forth tensions between the United States armies and Iran. Now, I believe they're going to be meeting over there in Turkey to see if they can make progress of this nuclear deal, which was going to be revised potentially from 2015 all the way to 2018, because I believe the United States had withdrawn from it and Iran as well too. And then the United States reimposed sanctions against them. Matthew 24 and verse 7, for nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, right? Because you're still going to have the Israel Defense Force versus Iran, and the United States versus against Iranian armies as well too. For nation shall rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there should be famines and pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places. This is the book of Joel, because you're still going to have proxy groups clash against one another, right along with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps going against the Israel Defense Force, cross-border conflict over there in Golden Heights, and over there in Syria, and over there in Israel as well too. It says the prophet Joel 3 verse 9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, prepare war, wake up the mighty man, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up, right? So let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. Verse 10, beat your plowshares and the swords and the pointing hooks and the spears, let the weak arms grow, right? Because you're still going to have the pro-Iranian groups and the proxy groups team up together, settling their differences. They're going to be going against the Israel Defense Force. Over there in the Middle East was Western Asia. Revelations 11 verse 14. Then I'm closed out. Revelations 11 verse 14, the second will pass, behold the third will come quickly. Right, so the second will pass, behold the third will come quickly. Because you're still going to have nuclear escalation tensions still heating up over there in the Middle East, despite the fact that the United States and Iran might come to some conclusion or a progress of a peace deal or a nuclear deal potentially. But in the meantime, but you're still going to have tensions heating up between the Israel Defense Force and the proxy groups and the pro-Iranian groups versus Iran as well too. And then you're going to have the dragons of Arabia over there in the Arabian Sea going to rise up against the Israel Defense Force. So Iran versus Israel Defense Force is going to go continue to heat up, despite the fact that the United States trying to push for a ceasefire and a peace deal and a nuclear deal with Iran, because the tensions are still going to heat up between Iran and Israel Defense Force, because you know they're arch enemies, they're arch nemesis. So with that, hopefully this sit down lesson was edifying of the prophecy updates as of February 3rd, 2026 on this Tuesday night. So with that, I would like to give all praises and glory and honor to Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai B'Hashem, Wakar Kadash, and the Heavenly Father, which you name is Yahweh, and his unbegotten Son Ba'Hashem, in the name of Hamashiach Yahweh Shai. Those are the true names in the ancient Paleo Hebrew, the Lost Kadash, the Holy Tongue. And I say Barak Thumb to the elders and apostles for Akima Akwa. Till next time, I will say Shalom.